Without even lifting her eyes from the tablet, Julia declared, "Due to restructuring, your role is being terminated." After dedicating 19 years to Northmere Dynamics, this was the farewell I was given. A cold, impersonal conference room with security waiting just outside the door. My name is Patrick Greer. I'm 59, and I worked as the senior financial controller for a manufacturing firm that once earned a reputation for producing reliable industrial equipment until the venture capitalists took control. For almost 2 decades, I'd ensured the accounting books were impeccable. Every figure verified to the very last cent. Damon pushed a cardboard box toward me on the table and said, "We'll need your key card and parking pass. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings." I gave a single nod, neither arguing nor pleading, just observing Julia's perfectly manicured fingers tapping impatiently on the glass surface. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Patrick?" Her voice hinted she expected me to cry or lash out, some reaction to justify their actions. I simply replied, "No, thank you for the opportunity." Standing up, I straightened my tie and slipped my leather portfolio under my arm, the same one my late wife had given me 15 years ago, before cancer claimed her, before I buried myself in spreadsheets and quarterly reports to avoid drowning in the silence of our empty home. Damon's words were pointed. "Human Resources will reach out to discuss your retirement package." We both knew I was still 5 years shy of qualifying for full benefits. Kyle, the security guard, looked uncomfortable as he followed me to my office. "Sorry you have to go through this, Mr. Greer," he whispered softly, while I carefully wrapped my deceased wife's photo in tissue paper. "This isn't your fault, Kyle," I assured him. I set my keycard down on the desk but kept the portfolio close. Inside was a flash drive containing 3 years' worth of detailed records. Every irregular vendor payment, suspicious wire transfer, and abruptly canceled audit. Julia and Damon thought they were cleaning house, removing the old-school accountant who asked too many questions about new consulting fees showing up mysteriously in departmental budgets. What they didn't realize was I'd been tracking everything since the day Julia misplaced those vendor verification forms, since Damon began pushing out anyone who challenged the new executive expense policies. I walked through the lobby past co-workers who suddenly found their shoes fascinating. 19 years of loyalty ended with a cardboard box and averted gazes. Only when I reached my car did I allow myself a tight, subtle smile. They assumed I was leaving empty-handed. Instead, I was walking away with all the secrets they desperately wanted hidden. I wasn't always skeptical by nature. The first 15 years at Northmere were good years. I joined while the company was still family-owned, led by Harold Northmire himself, a man who inspected production quality personally every morning before even taking his first sip of coffee. "Numbers don't lie, Patrick," he'd often say. "People do. Your job is to make sure our numbers tell the truth." After Harold retired, his son sold the company to outside investors. Changes came gradually. Minor cost-cutting, cheaper materials, delayed maintenance. Nothing drastic enough to raise red flags. Then came the rebranding. New leadership, a new vision. Julia arrived from a multinational known for aggressive growth strategies. Damon followed 6 months later, preaching corporate culture evolution. I gave them the benefit of the doubt until the first quarterly review under their regime. "These vendor payments don't match the inventory we've received," I pointed out. Julia smiled, a sharp, all-teeth smile, and said, "We're transitioning suppliers. It'll even out." It never did. My follow-up emails were ignored. Then came the executive retreats, consulting fees paid to phantom companies with no registration, expense reports with duplicated charges that somehow always got approved. I began keeping records, creating a shadow set of books, the real ones, and backing everything up off-site. Not because I had plans to act, but because Harold's voice kept echoing in my mind. Numbers don't lie. Meanwhile, the office culture shifted. Younger employees connected to Julia or Damon were promoted, while longtime staff were reassigned or pushed toward early retirement. Greg from purchasing stopped by after spotting invoice discrepancies. "Something's off, Patrick," he whispered 2 weeks later. Greg was gone. "Performance issues," they said. My daughter Ellie noticed the changes in me. "You're working late every night, Dad. What's going on?" I couldn't bring myself to tell her Ellie had just made partner at her law firm and didn't need my troubles. "Just busy season," I lied. But when Damon restructured finance last month and put his inexperienced nephew between me and executive approvals, I knew my time was up. So I made copies, secured evidence, and compiled a timeline of every suspicious transaction and policy change that stripped away financial safeguards not out of revenge, but because someone needed to remember what Harold had taught us: numbers don't lie. The weight of my situation hit me fully when I pulled into my driveway that afternoon. For the first time in nearly 20 years, I had nowhere to be the next morning. No reports to review, no month-end close to prepare. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the front door. The house felt emptier somehow. Even though nothing had changed, I set the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and poured 2 fingers of whiskey. The kind I saved for special occasions. This felt like one. Though not the way I'd imagined my career ending. The phone rang. It was Ellie Dad. Tina from accounting called. She said you were let go. What happened? I gave her the polished corporate version. Restructuring, position eliminated, standard euphemisms. "That's nonsense," she said, lawyer instincts kicking in. "They can't do that after 19 years without cause. We should sue." "No," I interrupted gently, "no lawsuits." "But Dad, trust me on this." I took a slow sip. Some battles aren't fought in court. After we hung up, I went to my home office and powered up the computer. The flash drive from my portfolio contained everything, organized by date, type, and amount. 3 years of financial misdeeds, cataloged with supporting proof. I opened a new document and began typing. Not an angry letter or threat, but a clear, factual summary of what I'd uncovered: dates, times, sums. The email addresses for the Securities and Exchange Commission and the state attorney's office were already filled in. My finger hovered over the send button. Was I really ready to hit send? These weren't simple spreadsheet mistakes or honest errors. This was deliberate financial wrongdoing. People would lose their jobs. Some might face charges. The company Harold built was at risk of collapse. I closed the laptop without sending the email. Instead, I found myself reaching for an old, dusty photo album, pictures from Harold's retirement party, snapshots of the team from years ago. There was my late wife standing next to me at a company picnic, both of us younger, oblivious to the cancer silently growing inside her. "What would you do, Diane?" I whispered to her, framed photo deep down. I already knew the answer. Diane never tolerated dishonesty. "Do what's right," she would have said firmly. "Everything else is just noise." I barely slept that night, but by morning, something inside me had shifted. The haze of shock had lifted, replaced by a sharp, cold clarity. This wasn't just about losing my job anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about protecting Harold's legacy, about the vendors getting cheated, about the employees who would ultimately suffer the consequences of executive greed. I made coffee, smoothed my tie out of habit formed over 19 years, and picked up the phone. "James, it's Patrick Greer. I need to discuss some financial irregularities at Northmere Dynamics." "Yes, it's extensive. Can we meet today?" James Parker had been my college roommate now. He worked as a federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. That was my first move. 3 days after meeting with James, a certified letter arrived from Northmire's legal department. The severance package they'd so generously prepared came with a confidentiality agreement requiring my signature, preventing me from ever discussing anything about the company, past or present, the compensation. An insultingly low sum. 3 months' salary after 19 years of service. I called Ellie for legal advice. After reviewing the documents, she said, "They're worried about something. This goes far beyond a typical non-disclosure agreement." "What if I refuse to sign?" I asked. "They're threatening to contest your unemployment benefits and withhold your payout for unused vacation days." Her voice grew firm but uncertain. "They're banking on you not having the resources to fight back." I thanked her and promised to think it over. What I didn't tell her was that my decision was already made later that afternoon. The doorbell rang. Julia stood on my porch, smiling, though the warmth never reached her eyes. "Patrick," she said, her tone almost friendly, "may I come in? I wanted to check on how you're holding up." I let her inside but didn't offer her anything to drink. "The severance paperwork," she said, placing a fresh copy on the coffee table. "There was a misunderstanding. We can offer an additional 2 months' pay if you sign today." "What's the urgency?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Her smile tightened. "The board is finalizing the next quarter's budget. We need to close out all outstanding financial obligations, like properly paying vendors." The words slipped out before I could stop myself. Something flickered in her eyes. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The Westbrook invoices," I said carefully. "The ones entered without any inventory receipts." "Clerical errors," she replied smoothly. "Already addressed." "And the consulting payments to Everett Partners, the company sharing an address with your brother-in-law's home office." The temperature in the room dropped at least 10 degrees. Julia's smile vanished completely. "Be careful with your accusations, Patrick," she warned, voice cold and hard. "Especially baseless ones that could be seen as defamatory. Did you take any company documents when you left? Because that would be theft." "I kept copies of my work as allowed by the employee handbook," I answered honestly. She stood abruptly. "I'll give you until tomorrow to reconsider the severance offer. After that, your retirement plans might get complicated." After she left, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off if you know what's good for you." We know about the flash drive that evening. I noticed a car parked across from my house. It stayed there overnight and was still there the next morning by the afternoon. My bank called to inform me someone had tried accessing my accounts using my social security number, but with incorrect passwords. Checking my email revealed dozens of subscription confirmations flooding my inbox. Services I'd never signed up for, all demanding immediate payment. It was a clear warning. They could make my life miserable. They could ruin my credit. They could keep an eye on my house. I called James again. "They're pushing back hard," I said. "Expect it," he replied calmly. "But concerning this points to more than just sloppy bookkeeping. Send me everything. The severance offer, that text, attempts at unauthorized access document the surveillance." "What about my evidence? Is it enough?" I asked. His pause said it all. "It's compelling, Patrick, but companies like Northmere have entire legal teams ready to claim these are isolated incidents or accounting mistakes. We need more. Someone on the inside." I hung up, feeling more isolated than ever. They were watching me, pressuring me, and I didn't have enough ammunition yet to fight back. About a week after Julia's visit, my old assistant Teresa called. Her voice was low, nervous. "Can we meet somewhere? Not in public, not at your house." We agreed to meet at my brother's cabin, an hour outside St. Louis. He was in Florida for the winter, so the place would be empty. Teresa arrived looking worn out, constantly glancing over her shoulder. "They're conducting a full audit," she said once inside. "But it's a sham. They're altering records, backdating approvals, fabricating paper trails that never existed." "How do you know this?" I asked. "They brought in consultants from Damon's old firm. They don't realize I can still access system logs. They still have me using your old credentials." She pulled out a flash drive. "I've been documenting everything, the before and after." I stared at the small device. "You're risking your job." They're planning to eliminate my position next month, she said bitterly. Found out when they accidentally copied me on the restructuring email. What Teresa showed me was worse than I imagined. This wasn't just inflated perks or creative accounting. Northmere had been systematically overcharging government contracts, falsifying certification documents for parts that failed safety standards, and recording phantom inventory to artificially inflate company value. There's more, Teresa said, pulling up an email chain. They're preparing to sell the manufacturing division to a private equity group. The employees won't find out until it's done. The pension fund? I asked. Her expression confirmed my worst fears. They've been borrowing from it for over a year. If the sale happens, there won't be enough left to cover obligations, hundreds of families, decades of retirement plans, all at risk. Who else knows? I pressed. Just the executive team, and now you. She hesitated. And maybe someone else. Drew from quality control started asking questions last month. He vanished a full week before I did. Fired. That's the catch. There's no termination paperwork. His file states he resigned, yet his badge was never turned in, and his desk was cleared out overnight. A chill settled deep in my gut. Have you heard from him? I asked. No, Teresa replied. His phone goes straight to voicemail. On the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that what we were up against was far darker than simple financial fraud. The surveillance car parked across my street was gone when I got back, but that did little to calm my nerves. I dialed Drew's number just as Teresa had instructed. It went to voicemail, so I left a vague message, something about reconnecting professional matters. Then I called James again. We need to speed this up, I told him, relaying Teresa's revelations. This changes everything. He agreed immediately. The pension fund angle elevates the stakes significantly. I'll brief my superiors tomorrow. But Patrick, he paused, be careful. If they're manipulating records on this scale, they're desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices. That night, sleep eluded me. My thoughts were tangled with Drew's fate, Harold Northmire's trust in me to safeguard his company's finances, and the factory workers who had devoted decades to the company, people counting on pensions that were now being drained away. Around 2 a.m., my security system triggered an alert, movement in the backyard. By the time I reached the window, whoever it was had disappeared, but I noticed my home office window was cracked open, just a hair's breadth, but enough. They weren't just watching anymore. They were sending a message. Nowhere was safe. I didn't wait for their next move. At first light, I put a plan into motion I'd been crafting since Teresa's disclosures. I moved every piece of evidence, mine and Teresa's, to 3 separate secure locations. One set went to Ellie with instructions to access only if something happened to me. Another was locked in a safety deposit box at a bank beyond Julia's reach. The third I encrypted and sent to James, accompanied by a separately delivered decryption key. Next, I reached out to Greg from purchasing, who'd been pushed out months earlier. We met at a diner in a neighboring town. I've been waiting for this call, he said grimly after I filled him in. I found the same discrepancies, started asking questions. Next thing I know, I'm escorted out for violating company policy. Did they threaten you afterward? I asked. Not directly, but a week later, my house was broken into. Nothing stolen, except my laptop and some files. He leaned in. I filed a police report, documented everything. Never thought it'd be useful, but it shows a pattern. Would you be willing to make a statement? I asked. He nodded without hesitation. Been feeling like a coward keeping quiet this long. By afternoon, I'd connected with 2 more former employees with similar stories, each holding pieces of the puzzle. Departments with unexplained numbers, projects that vanished from tracking systems, safety concerns buried deep. Then James called with news. The federal prosecutor's office was officially interested, but they needed more, especially on the pension fund manipulation. We need current financial records, he said. Without them, Northmere's lawyers will argue everything was fixed after you left. Teresa was risking everything just talking to me. Asking her to retrieve more documents could endanger her life. That's when my phone rang, an unknown number. Patrick. The voice was barely recognizable. Drew. I stepped outside the coffee shop where I'd been working, scanning the area nervously. Where are you? Are you all right? Listen carefully. His words rushed, fear thick in his voice. The Bentonville contract. Check testing certification documents against actual test results. They're installing defective parts in military vehicles. Drew, where are they? They threatened my family. Said they'd make sure my kids. His voice cracked. I'm leaving town, but someone needs to stop them before someone dies. The line went dead. Military contracts, defective parts. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about lives. I called James immediately and relayed everything. His response was swift. This changes everything. I'm bringing in the Department of Defense. Can you come to my office now? 3 hours later, I sat in a conference room with James and two stern-faced DOD investigators. I laid it all out, the fraud, the doctored documents, pension depletion, and now military contract corruption. We'll need your full cooperation, one investigator said. This investigation will be high-profile, fast-moving. Your safety might be at risk. We can arrange protection. I shook my head. I have a better idea. The next morning, I called Julia directly. I've been thinking about that severance package, I said, my voice meek, defeated. I'd like to discuss terms. Wise decision, she replied, barely hiding her satisfaction. Come to the office tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll finalize everything. Actually, I countered, I'd prefer somewhere neutral. The Lakeside Hotel has private meeting rooms. She hesitated, then agreed. What she didn't know was that the Lakeside was already swarming with federal agents, rooms wired for recording, every entrance under surveillance. The trap was set. Julia was walking right into it. The Magnolia Room at the Lakeside Hotel was unnervingly silent as Julia pored over the paperwork I'd brought. Her attorney sat beside her, whispering occasionally. Everything appears in order, the lawyer finally said, sliding the non-disclosure agreement across the table. Just sign here, and we can put this unfortunate chapter behind us. I glanced over the document, 12 pages of legal jargon crafted to silence me forever. Next to it sat the severance check, 5 months' salary for 19 years of service. Before I sign, I said carefully, I'd like to clarify something. This agreement covers all company matters, correct? Including the pension fund irregularities and the Bentonville military contract. The attorney stiffened. Julia's smile faltered briefly. All company matters, she confirmed smoothly. Standard language. I nodded, reached for a pen, then paused. One more question. Does this cover my obligation to report federal crimes I've witnessed? What are you implying? The attorney leaned forward sharply. I'm not implying anything. I stood slowly. I'm stating I've already provided evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and criminal endangerment to federal authorities, including our conversation right now. At that moment, the conference room door opened. James walked in, flanked by FBI agents and DOD investigators. Julia Stokes, one agent said. We have a warrant to search all Northmere Dynamics facilities and seize financial records related to government contracts. Her face drained of color as James placed a thick folder on the table. This is just a small fraction of what we've uncovered, James said quietly. The rest is being submitted to a grand jury as we speak. Julia lunged instinctively for her phone, but an agent stepped in gently, blocking her move. Damon Ellis and the CEO are being taken into custody for questioning at the same time, James continued, along with several board members. I didn't stick around to see Julia escorted away. My role was finished. 6 months after those arrests at the Lakeside Hotel, I found myself standing inside the old Northmere manufacturing plant, watching the assembly line workers go about their tasks. The machines still hummed with the steady rhythm they had for decades, but everything else had changed. During the investigation, the company was placed in receivership. When the dust settled, a coalition of employees managed to buy back the manufacturing division with assistance from a state economic development fund. They renamed it Northmere Legacy Manufacturing. I was invited to help establish new financial systems, ones built on transparency and accountability at every level. All done for the day, Mr. Greer, Kyle said with a respectful nod as I signed out at the front desk. The same Kyle who had once escorted me out was now greeting me with genuine respect. Just about, I replied, handing back my visitor badge. Outside, Ellie waited patiently in her car. "How's it looking in there?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "Good. They've got a strong team. They'll be fine without me constantly looking over their shoulders." I glanced back at the building, a faint smile crossing my lips. Harold would be proud. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. The news had covered the story extensively. Executives arrested, charges filed, plea deals negotiated. The pension funds had been partially recovered. Not everything, but enough so most retirees wouldn't lose their homes. Julia and Damon were awaiting trial. The CEO had turned state's evidence. The story faded from headlines, replaced by newer scandals. "Any regrets?" Ellie asked as we pulled up to my house. I thought about it carefully before answering. "No," I said finally. "I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because it was the right thing." That evening I packed away my files on Northmere. The entire story was documented and preserved, but I no longer needed to carry the weight of it. Tomorrow I'd begin a new chapter as a part-time financial ethics consultant for a manufacturing association, helping other companies set up safeguards to prevent people like Julia and Damon from manipulating the books. Not a bad final chapter for a 59-year-old accountant who just wanted the numbers to tell the truth.